Hello and welcome to the Hardy Brain, the show that takes athletic, introverted entrepreneurs and leaders and transforms them into ironclad brain performers. I'm your host, Dr. David Hardy, and today on our show we've got another amazing guest. She is an organizational psychologist, an AI talent strategist who has achieved and guided transformation initiatives for organizations worldwide. Please welcome to the show, Amy Centers. How are you doing today?
I'm doing so well. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to dig into some really juicy topics with you.
Yeah, I'm blown away by what you're doing here because, well, as you put it, basically work is unsustainable right now for people.
Yes, it is. I mean, we've had that term quiet cracking floating around, right?
Yeah,
I don't think it's all that quiet
no,
because when I have conversations with literally anyone, it's not gender specific, it's not any particular demographic or age, generation. Everybody is feeling the same way, which is that this isn't sustainable quality of life or work, right? And so part of my deep deep love for AI is that it can expand capacity, right? There's a lot involved in that, so we can unpack that, but it can expand capacity. Um, but there's so many underpinnings that need to take place for people to really thrive in work and entrepreneurship, all of it, right now. And they're just not being addressed. We're still working on the industrial era work models. And it's almost like reverting back to punching a clock now with people having to
oh,
badge in and out and,
it's
control
ridiculous.
command and
Yeah,
control around so many different aspects of the workday. When people thrive when they're trusted, right? So, and then there's more micromanagement. There's much less clarity right now because the pace. I love the idea that today is the slowest day we're ever going to experience. Not because the reality of that is great, but because it's going to force us to rethink how we're showing up, right? Like we can't keep doing this. We can't go from dopamine hit to dopamine hit. We can't tax out our prefrontal cortex in the early part of the day in a bunch of pointless meetings and then not have anything but automatic pilot later in the day when we have to do our deep thinking. Like there's so much of it that just is not working.
and it is a laundry list, as you mentioned, of things that just are not, yeah, not working today in society, and people's identity, though, is tied to their work and it's tied to how they feel they're performing. And now yeah, it like differentiates us from others sometimes as well. And it's this huge identity that people take very personal. And I think a lot of it too is right now people feel overwhelmed by technology in this arena. Like you mentioned, pointless meetings. Well, pointless meetings have shot through the roof since we had more technology. Like,
Which is also not being approached in the right way, because for me, at least
correct.
my journey, and I'm sure I'll be curious to hear yours as well with, working with AI, is you need agency, you need freedom, you need creative license, you need to be able to make mistakes with it. And everything seems to be tightly wound. So then there's this, to your point, this added layer that didn't even exist maybe 2 years ago that people are also grappling with. Like, yeah, nobody, I don't think anybody, I don't know that anybody's really doing it all that well. I know I've heard the CEO of Accenture say, we're trying to layer technology on existing work systems and existing thinking when really it has to be blown all up, right? And we have to rethink what this looks like. But a lot of that also comes down to leadership. I've said for years, you can't lead by position authority or command and control anymore, because you have people on your team who are probably smarter in many, many areas than you. And also just the idea that because somebody's another level up in an organization that they have some kind of superpower is so absurd. And we know, Liz Wiseman and multipliers have been around a long time. We know that there's different thinking around this, but I think when people get stressed, they regress back to command and control. And I think that that's some of the pendulum swing that we're seeing with the return to office, thinking that that's going to lead to more productivity, when actually I think it leads to more coffee dates. It's not the work that we're going to need to be doing, because AI can automate so much, is work that's going to require people to be able to focus and, to have sustained attention, which I know a lot of people are watching videos at 2x the speed. I wonder if we're going to sound like little chipmunks talking, because people are going to try to get through this podcast fast, because people don't have attention spans anymore. But I want to, and I'll stop talking in a second.
Well, that kind of goes into so much. Like, we have so much information we need to digest here. And like, even with the things we're mentioning, it's information, information, information. And how do people actually deal with this right now? Like, I believe, have kind of hit that threshold where you can't cram any more information in. And
Totally.
at light speed, it's not going to work like that. That whole system of our brain, as developed it is probably reached that threshold, as it not?
Totally. Absolutely. So one of the things I don't want to pass over, so let's circle back to this, is the idea of the need to decouple our identity from our work in this new phase of technology. So let's go back to that. But I do want to talk about this, right? So I'm actually working on an article about the decline and fall of thought leadership, because AI makes everyone a thought leader. I mean, you see it all over LinkedIn. Everybody's got their pronouncements with their bumps, the AI driven mic drop at the end. And I think that people are going to have to rethink like what it means to actually contribute at work in different ways, right? That goes back to that we can't just apply old thinking to this new era. We're going to have to like really rethink that. That's why I love the idea of bringing in understanding brain states to the workday, because
Yes.
we're the outdated systems in which we work drain our prefrontal cortex within probably the first 3 or 4 hours of our workday, when we're in all those morning meetings so that we hit all the global time zones. And then we get to the latter part of the day and we've moved to automatic pilot. And you know what that's like. We all know what that's like, when all of a sudden your attention is like, oh, let me see what's going on with the BBC right now. Or, that new Hardy Brain podcast just dropped. I think I'll turn it on, right? Because we start to look for external stimuli. But to your point, sorry, to circle back about attention and incoming stimuli, I actually think one of the not only leadership traits of the future, but human traits, it's not even the future, it's now, is the ability to curate information. We just can't take it all in. We can't.
Right.
We just
No.
can't. We saw, I'm not bringing in politics, but there was a major event a couple of weeks ago, and the governor of the state in which it happened said, get off social media. Like, our brains are not wired to take in this kind of divisive input all the time. We've got it. And I thought that really resonated with me, because I think we all have responsibilities now to create filters to protect ourselves from all the attention grabbing headlines, new data points, thought leadership, all of it, right? Like, we've got to really curate what we're going to let in.
Okay, so is this one of these underpinnings you're talking about? Is, okay, well, let's first look at our biology, how the brain actually works, and how much bandwidth or memory or attention span we actually have to get a task done. And that's going to change throughout the day, and it's going to be different for each person. We'll go into that again. And then, of course, it's, okay, well, filtering, curating, and actually planning and organizing all this information and integrating it with the time we've got. Am
Yes.
I kind of on the right track here?
I think that's exactly right. Yeah. I think that people also, I feel like I keep saying people of the future, but it's actually now, like
It
from today
is. Yeah.
forward, we
And
really have,
and really that is that leading part right now is to figure this out so that people can share it with other people. Because you're right, it's no longer about facts because we can get that in a it can come up faster than we can type it. So
absolutely.
how do we
We're
actually
analyzing
do
data.
this stuff?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, AI can do all that stuff. It can synthesize, it can summarize, it can do all the things, right? So, what we have to do is be like air traffic controllers of information, our input and our output, right? And
Right.
I think that, being conscious of the fact that we get roughly on a good day 2 to 4, maybe 5 hours of our prefrontal cortex at work. We're certainly not getting the whole day. And how every time our attention gets drawn to something that's popped up, a notification, a Slack chat, whatever is coming up and infiltrating whatever we're doing, and we're not able
Yeah.
to stay focused, there's mental residue, right? With task switching. I don't like the term multitasking anymore because it was established like 2 decades ago that we can't do it. I don't know why we still
No.
talk about it like we can. But every time we task switch, there's a mental residue that lingers because it takes our brain longer to pivot than we think it does, right? We think we're bobbing and weaving and flexing and pivoting and doing all these things, but our brain is actually catching up. And it's almost like a battery that's leaking juice. Like every time we do that, we start draining our prefrontal cortex. So
But
I
at the
think
same time, we're like mandated to have these distractions. Like it's the next software update, it's the next big plan from the boss above that says, "Oh yeah, we need to have quick communication and we need these pop-ups to happen so that we can communicate with everyone and and our customers." And it
it's
just seems one technological thing after another that actually is in theory good, but brain-wise it's detrimental. And how do we stop that from continually occurring? Like, how do we get awareness that tech needs to be made in a brain friendly way?
Well, and I think a lot of that is going to be counterintuitive. So, we're in this era right now. And I love the fact that humans oscillate. I mean, if we were going to just continue down this path forever, I would feel really hopeless right now. But we do
Right.
love to oscillate. And I see that in a lot of different areas.
Well, there's
Um,
seasons in nature, right?
yes. And
Yeah.
there's seasons in business. And we're in a business of command and control, come back to work, badge in and out, and surveillance technology, right? So you were just talking about all the different pings and things. We've now become cultured to having to be readily available on Slack if we get pinged, or that little light that shows that we're literally sitting in front of our computer right now has to be green all the time, right? Or Teams chats. So there's really not any oxygen in our day. So what we do is we find ourselves teed up for responsiveness rather than value add.
Right.
And I think that that's a little bit tragic. And I think that that's going to have to change because these are the productivity dings that really matter, right? Like
Yeah.
going
Now,
into the
now let's integrate that now with you put it down to 6 different brain states,
yes.
and and others will maybe tweak it or do something different. But what are your definitions of 6 different brain states, and how does this apply to this current world?
Yeah. Okay. So I feel like the crown jewel of it all is our prefrontal cortex, which we know is the newer part of our brain, the smaller part of our brain. It takes much more energy for it to function, which is why it depletes quicker, right? So I call that the executive or the focused part of our brain. And by the way, I do know that I've had many people in business go, nobody wants to talk about brain stuff, Amy. But I keep countering by saying they're going to have to, because I think we're
Right.
reaching a tipping point with this, right? So we might be a little early in the conversation, but I think we're going to get there.
Yeah.
So we've
Plus,
got the
people who don't want to talk about brain stuff are just weird.
well, we're certainly not going to see them in our little tribe, are we?
No.
No. So I do want to put some softer language around things like prefrontal cortex, which is why I kind of refer to it as like our, and not just me, many people do, executive or focused part of our brain, right? So that is around like when we can create clear goals. There's, it doesn't require quiet space, but it thrives in a
Thrives in.
more, the quiet environment, and it thrives with autonomy, right?
Yes.
Um,
Well, too, like the brain is a sensory organ. And if we're trying to integrate information we already have in our brain and figure it out, we can't be having more sensory information bombarded, because then
that's
we're
the
lost. Our
problem.
thoughts aren't there.
That's kind of the
Yeah.
modern employee paradox, right? Or leader
Right.
paradox.
Yeah.
So all
We're gonna
levels.
whip you to think better, but we're we're gonna make it very difficult.
We should have a reality show like Survivor, right? We throw all these obstacles in the way, and can you get meaningful work done by 5 or 6 or 7, whatever?
Yeah.
That's a whole other thing. Um, but how it feels when you're in your prefrontal cortex is you feel calm, you feel strategic, you feel empathetic, you're online, right? So the way you sustain it is you protect your focus, you monotask, and you schedule breaks before it gets depleted. Right?
Yes.
So that's one of the states. The other one is habitual, which is when we slide into our basal ganglia. So this is really good if we're doing things that are repetitive, routine, or creating checklists. It feels very efficient, steady, and slightly detached. And when you kind of are in that state, or when when your brain has moved into that state, that's when you want to do things like, think about, what it like the admin tasks of your day,
Yeah,
right?
these are kind of the read and react part. It's
Yes,
the
yes,
yeah,
yes.
it's stuff coming at you that you react to. It's your dopaminergic system. It's your quick eye movements. It's kind of like you're in an athletic game like situation. Am I right on that one?
100%. That's when you respond to Slack, right? And
Yes.
and
Yeah.
maybe, there are times when people are sitting on something quite urgent. And so I'm not suggesting you take 2 hours to respond to somebody that needs your approval on something, to pull it, to move something forward. I'm not suggesting that. I think that there needs to be better use of subject lines in emails, categorization of different messages, like, I would like a response by 2 o'clock today, to help people be able to kind of prioritize high priority responses versus low priority, because everything just gets kind of thrown into a junk pile. And then we also have
Oh,
to
yeah.
sift through that pile, which is draining the best part of our
Hey,
brains.
let's face it, email is not the most exciting game out there. So if we're using this system, like
Email's been broken for at least 10
let's come
years.
up with programs that gamify it. Let's actually make it fun.
Totally. And people try to move away from it with Teams and chat and different types of community, but then that just creates its own noise, right? And its
Yes,
own
yeah.
sifting and its own, and in some ways, I know there's people who are better at using Slack than I am, but I do find email is a little bit easier to categorize quickly. And some of these
Oh,
other
yeah.
tools, anyway, I don't want to get into the logistics of that, but there's a lot of rethinking that could be done in this space. Let's just say
Yeah.
that.
All right, let's go to the next brain state.
Yeah, because there's 6. It's a lot. The next one is reactive, our threat response, right? So our limbic system and our amygdala, and that is our fight or flight. So tight chest, fast talk, blame or avoidance. We know when we're emotionally triggered, we've at least had EQ in our lives. I don't know,
Oh,
has it been
yes.
40 years? It's been a long time that we know about EQ. So we understand about self-regulation, that 10 seconds of messaging going from our limbic system to the, more responsive parts of our brains. I think people know this, right? Do
Um,
people know
I'm hoping so, but they
this? Okay.
might not know it kind of when it's labeled. They feel this all the time.
So you know when
Yeah.
your chest tightens, you know when you're turning red, you know when you're angry, right? And
Yes.
and EQ, just in case maybe you haven't been swimming in the waters, EQ, emotional intelligence, is the ability to kind of recognize when that's happening and implementing some strategies so that you can be responsive versus reactive. Because when we get into that threat response, we're really in our survival part of our brain, and we have a tendency to kind of just quickly respond. Because think about it, back in the cave people days, we only had a split second to decide if we're going to slay the saber tooth or not, right? So you tend to want to react really quickly. In our modern environment, that can be a real challenge, right?
And there's no
Because
threats at work, right?
the social threats versus
Yeah,
the
or
physical threat.
human evolved. I want to
Yeah,
say fake threats, but they feel real threats.
yeah, absolutely,
All right.
absolutely.
So we've got three so far. We've got the executive, we've got kind of the game like situations, the basal ganglia, and then
Yeah.
we've got our fear centers, which can be wound up like nothing else. And
Yes.
what about the other three here?
Yeah, so default is a reflective state, right? So that's kind of when you're in the shower and you're having some really creative thinking, but it's like in a kind of drifting sense, or maybe you're in your commute during downtime. So there actually can be some really good thinking in that state, but that's another one of the six. The other one is flow or integrated. So this is the prefrontal cortex plus the basal ganglia plus the dopamine loop, right? So
Oh,
this is
okay.
when
Yep.
you feel energized, immersive, timeless, like you've got that flow happening when you're doing some work. And then there's depleted or offline, when you have very low prefrontal cortex activity and your survival circuits are activated. So this can be triggered by not sleeping well, to our earlier point, the constant onslaught of input, and decision fatigue, which is also something that's incredibly ubiquitous in daily work activity as well. I think people are really struggling with decision fatigue. And with the advent of AI, they're also now struggling with ethical fatigue, because there's
Ah,
so many
yeah.
different ways to have to navigate technology, that's another layer that people have to consider.
Right. Now, how many people do you think are like almost living in their survival mode?
You take a guess first. I don't know. What do you think?
Way, way too many. Yeah.
Everyone I talk to, I can't remember the last time I talked to anybody who was like, I just sailed through my day. It's, I hit all the high notes, and it's done with calm and grace and ease. I
Right.
don't
And I'm going
know.
home energized.
Yeah, I'm
I
going
think
home
I
at
can get a workout in.
5. Yeah, I haven't heard that in a long time, if ever.
Yeah.
I do think there was a spike of mental fitness prioritization, sort of as we were drifting out of COVID. I do think that there was a bit of that, but then we had the existential threat. So I don't know. I don't think anybody's operating in their best self state. Do you?
No, I don't think so. And especially with all the other stressors that are hitting people outside of the work environment,
It's
that
on so many
everything's
levels.
gone up in price. People just are generally struggling all around. And a lot of people, too, like they know there's better jobs, careers out there that would fulfill them, but who's going to give up the money they need right now
Yeah.
to barely scrape by. And
Yeah. And all of these factors, when we talk about like what are the levers that are making business competitive, these are the really important levers, right? The productivity, the Gallup's been trying to measure engagement for at least as long as EQ's been around, so decades. And it's actually declining. And it's all about discretionary effort. People
right, yeah.
in general, I'm not sure, are putting discretionary effort in en masse. I think that when you do it, I know from personal experience too, it's when you have good connectivity with your leader, you're trusted, you're valued, you've got a multiplier leader who thinks you're really smart, and you'll step up and you'll extend yourself. But I think leaders also are so overwhelmed right now. They're not operating out of their best states, and self-regulation can be really
Yeah,
difficult.
that was going to be another kind of thought point I wanted to pick your brain on.
Yeah.
Who's needing solutions more? Is it the leaders or the people who have to follow directions?
I always think that managers, leaders are the linchpin of it all,
Okay.
because
Yeah.
what you do is you multiply impact. So if you've got a team of 5 people and your leader is chaotic and emotionally not regulated, you're impacting 5 people, right? If you're a senior leader with maybe 400 people under you, that impact reverberates. So I feel like it has to start with managers and just recognizing. I've been doing leadership development for a really long time. And even back in 2016, would be having conversations with managers or, frontline leaders to say, what percentage of your day, are you operating at before you even get to this people leadership part? And it was usually like, I'm at 120% of my day before I even think about the people, because they're all player coaches, right? Not
Right.
that many people are leading others and not actually responsible for their own deliverables. It's all a mix now. And I
So
think it's
you have been
good.
in that game for a while here, and you're having conversations with people who want to organize their companies in a better constructive way. Um, but so much of this is right now reactionary, and we're
Yes.
trying to plan the future that's already occurring 5, 10 years ago. Um, what are you seeing that kind of gives you hope that, yeah, we can make a way better work environment and get people functioning better and actually enjoying their lives?
Great question. I feel like sometimes, especially in the workspace, this doesn't happen until there are pain points that actually impact the bottom line, because so many decisions are made on a spreadsheet or maybe smart sheet these days, right? And so I think that that's what's going to drive the tipping point. I think right now organizations are still in this like enthrallment of AI and how to use it, and nobody's actually doing a great job at it. So I don't think I think we're a little bit early with our conversation in terms of widespread engagement with this type of awareness. But I think we're going to get there, because going back to the earlier part of our conversation, people are cracking and it's not quiet.
No,
And
it's not.
when you're
Yeah.
fueled by caffeine and a lack of sleep, and you feel pressure to be in the office before your boss gets there and stay after they leave, and you can't pick up your kids from school because of that, or take them to the doctor, whatever it is, people are splintering. And I think a lot of times they're masking it, but the internal turmoil is not conducive to being their best selves at work, right?
So you're working on this though, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm in a
Yeah.
lot of conversations about it, rethinking, what are some don't ask me for some detailed lists right now, because I'm still kind of thinking about how we can do this, but I'm actually spending some time thinking about, okay, so if we blew up the concept of meetings or performance evaluations or XYZ, like what could this look like in the future? But I think the conversation is the starting point. Somebody once told me, raising awareness is how you solve the problem rather than trying to solve the problem. And they use Slack as an example. Slack was invented with people trying to communicate over some project management work or something like that, right? So I think that we just need to be having this conversation and bringing in some deep thinking about what this looks like, because we're going to have to rethink our systems. That's the difficulty of it. I can talk all day about employees and leaders, and I can have some impact there. The systems, the mass systems of how we operate in the world of work, it might be a little bit outside my influence, but I can have the conversation, and we can be engaging more and more people in the conversation, and we can get, more thinking around what this could look like
Right.
and bring awareness
Oh,
to.
and I applaud you for having these conversations and to starting them and getting them out there, because even if somebody had an amazing system planned out for all of humanity, if they then went and said, here you guys go, it would fall apart without conversations. And not just that, you're coming up with some solutions to this. What are these solutions that you're already putting out there to get the ball rolling with improvement here?
Yeah, so this is where I think, when I stated earlier, I'm enthralled with AI. I think that this AI can help us work through a lot of this, right? And so right now we're in sort of a hygiene state with AI, which is looking at productivity measures and a little bit of brainstorming, writing better emails, like really kind of low level automating tasks and things of that nature. But I think we're going to get into more complex human machine integration in the next year or so. And so I think that that's going to force us to move beyond productivity and think more about how we're going to expand capacity. So I don't have some, I could talk to you about different ways to leverage technology to, we know the note taking and this, summarizing meetings and things, but we have a personal responsibility for this as well. And also kind of on the macro sense, because even though I'm kind of critical about the command and control nature of organizations right now, people need to show up to the plate. Like, you can't
Right.
work
Yeah.
remotely and have your camera off all day and you're disengaged and you're doing your laundry for, the middle of the day. Like, people need to grow up in that realm. But also with the use of AI, people need to have some agency and really be thinking about and have some personal responsibility for, how can this help me specifically, right? Like, what are the things that this can help me in ways in which I can expand my capacity in meaningful ways and contribution to the company? Like, it's going to take an individual relationship. I think it's already happening that there's sort of AI human strategists. I think that's going to evolve to psychologists. Like, there's going to be a real integration of thinking, and people have to come to the table with a commitment and a openness, I think, to really kind of engage the ways that they can work better. Like, this is a collective conversation, right? So sorry, I kind of went around the point because I have a lot to say. But I
Well,
think,
I love this because, yeah, you're talking about, okay, well, how do we integrate this? And most of this is with people who are fully functional or pretty functional
yeah,
brain wise.
yeah,
And I think, too, when we're looking at all of this, we have to realize that when we talk about basal ganglia and we talk about all these other parts of the brain, there's a lot of people out there whose brains aren't firing efficiently. And that's too, like we mentioned, psychologists and, of course, the organized psychologists like yourself who are really putting this framework together. But at the bottom of the pyramid or the foundation is brain health and making people more efficient. And some of the things out there that you're promoting is really in tune with that as well. And yeah, I like how every aspect is getting looked at and how you're working on it. Can you tell people, though, more about Smart Work Labs and the work you're doing and how they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to circle back because when I was kind of dancing
Yep.
away from a question, I realized you brought me back to what I was wanting to say initially, which is that going back to that idea of personal responsibility, it doesn't serve anybody for us to show up with no sleep
No.
and fueled by sugar and caffeine all day and
Yeah, at a bare
racing
minimum.
around. Right.
Yeah.
So going back to there's some hygiene activity and then there's like delighter activity. There's probably more things in the middle, but we do have a collective responsibility to show up, be collaborative, protect our brain state, be sort of a functioning human in the
Right.
day. And I think
Yeah.
that a lot of people have allowed the pressures that we're all facing to erode some of those underpinning hygiene factors, like showing up well rested, making sure you're not, even though I'm kind of doing that this morning, you're not having a conversation solely on coffee. Right? Like, you got some protein in the morning. Like we've got some things that we can work with to help us show up as our best selves. And when we get under stress, we tend to jettison them out the window. But to talk to you about SmartWorks, it's really kind of my little innovation hub where I'm thinking through these ideas. So I'm pulling together a model called BQ, which is sort of brain state awareness, right? It's the things that we talked about. So it's checking in, much like how with EQ we check in with our emotional state. With BQ, we understand where our brain is throughout the day, that we peak at our prefrontal cortex around 8 or 9 in the morning. It starts to dip. 2 o'clock is not the best time of day to be doing those complex problem solving, activity. And so helping people kind of understand how they can work with their brains rather than against them. That's really the core of what I'm doing right now. I also have some neuro infused leadership initiatives. But really the focus right now, I want to not diffuse it and keep it really focused on spreading the message around brain state awareness, because I think that it's the missing link that we haven't been talking about.
Right. Wow. And then how do they find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, follow me, whatever your preference is. And then also, I have a website, smartworkslab.com. I also have a Tuesday newsletter called Smart Takes on Substack. And I have some Medium articles as well. So you can find me lots of
Wow.
places.
Yeah. This is invaluable information. So definitely reach out to Amy. So smartworkslab.com or LinkedIn. And of course, well, stay tuned to the next episode of The Hardy Brain, the show that takes athletic, introverted entrepreneurs and leaders and transforms them into ironclad brain performers. Take care.